What's up, guys? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Traeger Grills. Traeger Grills, look, it's my favorite grill. I use it multiple times a week. Very easy for anywhere from basic smoking to long, really extended, complicated cooks. So wherever it is you are in your grilling and cooking experience, the Traeger Grill is the grill for you. TraegerGrills.com. Get you one. What's up, guys? This is former UFC fighter Elliot Marshall, and you are listening to The Blueprint. I believe that there's a blueprint of how the most successful people structure their lives. They don't all do it the same. They don't all do the same things. And on this podcast, you're going to hear inspirations, motivations, and stories about how they go through their life. These stories will give you clues and tricks of exactly how you can discover your passion, find your power, and then go give your purpose to the world. Thank you so much for listening. Let's jump into this week's episode. This episode of the podcast is with Laurie Ruderman. Laurie is one of my favorite kind of individuals to talk to. She made a decision to change her life. She was in a corporate America, moving up in the quote unquote world and corporate structure, and just wasn't happy and didn't like it, wanted to make a change in her life, and she did it. She completely changed it around. She completely changed the direction of and the course of where her life was headed. So amazing story, amazing to listen to somebody who was doing well, doing a great job in their job, and make the decision, say, you know what, this doesn't make me happy. I'm going to do something else. So without further ado, here we go. Laurie Ruderman. Laurie, how are you?
Oh, my friend, I'm great. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. I have a question for you. I was just, I do very little research about my people that I'm going to podcast with. You know, I like to do it right when I book the guests originally, and, you know, or approve the guests. And then I like to do it right before we jump on. So I can go on the journey with people, you know? So I Instagram stalked you for a second, and you're not very active. You have 34,000 followers with 3 posts. You are amazing how you've done that.
Yeah.
But one of your posts says, "Fear is your only God."
Yeah.
And that's my first question for you. What are we doing? What are we talking about there? I would love to hear about your feeling here.
Well, you know, I have to say at one point I was very active on Instagram, and I was too active. I was addicted, right? And spending a lot of time, and there was no ROI. And I thought, oh my God, what am I afraid of? What else am I not doing, right? Why am I on my phone so much? So I wiped my Instagram account free of the past, free of nostalgia, free of the photos that I thought, oh, I look amazing in, or, oh, those are cute. And I just put up 3 photos that I wanted to represent me. So one of them is from a Rage Against the Machine concert, and the statement fear, you know, I can't remember exactly what it says, but you know, fear is your only God if you live in this world where you're making decisions, I think, based on narcissism, based on comparison, based on this idea that we have to conform. And so if I want something to be up on Instagram, I want it to be a statement that you don't have to be on Instagram. Go do something else. So yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, fuck yeah, indeed. So, you know, I'm pleased that you didn't do any research, because it allows me to come on and, I don't know, tell a more authentic story. So I used to have a job like so many people in this world, in the world of human resources. And I thought, there's got to be more to life. And so I quit it. I mean, after saving, after trying to invest in myself, and leaned into really 4 quadrants that I hope I get to talk to you about today. The first quadrant is self-leadership, which is the art and science of individual accountability. The second quadrant that I leaned into is well-being. And I don't mean in some like hippie woo-woo way. I mean like really thinking about how to be whole in body, mind, and spirit. The third quadrant is continuous learning, because I believe when you're learning, you're growing, you're thriving, and that's what life is all about. And then the fourth quadrant I really fucking tried to own is risk taking. how to make sure that I fail in better, smarter, more interesting ways and not the same way over and over again. So that's really the 4 things that I'm all about.
Guys, I hope you got enough out of this episode. That's been a really great episode. She dropped everything you needed to hear right there. Holy shit. Yeah. Rage Against the Machine, first of all. Oh my God. Hell yeah. Right. Nice.
I mean, you want to be punched in the face, they'll do it for you. They will just tell you exactly what's up. And, I think for many of us who live in a corporate world, we may have been interesting in a past life. We may have gone to concerts and enjoyed music and lived a life that was a little alternative, right? And then we go to work and we sacrifice and we get addicted to these things that create so-called social mobility. But if you get high enough up in the food chain, you realize that you don't get any of that unless you make it, right? And so I worked for big, large corporations. And I always wondered, why did other people have freedom? Why did they have money? Why did they have the ability to do what they wanted to do? And that's because they grabbed life by the throat and took it. And so that's what I tried to do. So yeah, Rage Against the Machine is one of my big influences.
I love Rage. I love them. I love everything they stand for. I love the name of them. I think sometimes people take it too far. That
I mean, there's a lot to be angry about in this world. Yeah,
there's a lot to be angry about, without a doubt. But there's a lot to be grateful for as well.
For sure.
And there's benefits and drawbacks to everything.
Absolutely.
Even the good. There's a drawback to the good. So
makes you comfortable.
It makes you yeah. And like one of the things that you were just talking about, this I don't know. I feel it sometimes, right? Because as my company grows, I own martial arts schools.
Yeah.
And you start to have, we have 150 employees and you start to have to do this stuff where you're just like, oh God, like, I don't know if I like this. Like, this, but you have to.
Interesting how that happens. Success can, breed all kinds of opportunities, but it can breed complacency. Now I go around the world really talking to people about what it's like to be an authentic leader and what it's like to make a difference in people's lives and how to be a leader that people love. I mean, that's really what I'm known for. And one of the things you have to remember is that you're not there for the system. You're not there for the paperwork. You're not there for the timesheets and the payroll. You're there to really make a difference in people's lives. And if you can hang on to that, even in some small way, that truly makes a difference to those individuals and to the success of your business. I know that in my own story, I work with and coach individuals, and I can see that as long as we hang on to that kernel of humanity, we give ourselves a competitive advantage for sure.
Mm-hmm. And hang on to who you are a little bit, correct?
Oh, like a little absolutely, bit. Absolutely. In my journey when I was working in corporate America, I really felt like I didn't have an identity. And that's because I was over-indexed on work. And that's the American story, right? You are your job title. You are that position on the org chart, the P5, the A22, wherever you are in that career level. And the more successful I got in my job, the least connected I felt to my own identity. And frankly, I was just weird. When all you do is talk about work, you become weird. You have to learn and grow. You have to absolutely push yourself. You have to frankly, you have to do more than drink the corporate Kool-Aid. But for a long time, I didn't until it was too much, until things were broken and I had to find another way.
What was that like for you? What was that? What was that? I'm going to assume probably if you were doing okay financially in that world, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It was funny because I worked in human resources for a large global pharmaceutical that had 100,000 employees and was trying to get to 50,000 employees, right? It was that time in our history where layoffs were rife, kind of like the season we're emerging into today. And so I was flying all around the world as this cute, young, blonde, petite woman, laying people off. And I would do things like in the airport in the middle of America, not think I had time to eat anything decently. So I would eat Starburst and drink a Pepsi and run to my next flight, and you cannot do anything amazing when you're over caffeinated, when you're over sugared. And yet I tried to fuel my body that way. And I remember being in an airport once at 29 and sneezing and throwing out my back. There's like no excuse. That's the prime of your life, right? I just had this moment where my back hurt. I was eating like crap, flipping through an Us Weekly because God forbid I put anything good in my brain. I'm tired. And I'm like wondering, why does Miley Cyrus live a really great life? Like, why do all these superstars and amazing people have these beautiful homes and I have a beautiful home that I never see? Like, why is it? And it's because I chose it, because I prioritized work, because I said, you know what? This global pharmaceutical company is more important than anything I'm doing in my own life. These were choices, difficult choices that I made and that I had to unwind. And I didn't do it immediately. But once you kind of start to take ownership for that, you realize the only person who can solve this is me. The only person who cannot eat that fucking Starburst is me, you know? So many people I work with, men, women, caregivers are like, oh, I had breakfast this morning. I ate off my toddler's plate. And you don't take on the world by eating leftover toast. That's not how you do anything great. So once I started to see that connection around individual accountability and well-being, it made some of my choices not easier, but clearer.
Clear. Right.
Clearer.
Right. It's interesting when when the choice becomes clear in your mind, that you almost can't not act.
Yes.
Right. It starts to eat you up that you are not acting, that you're sitting on the decision that you know is correct and going, I'm not going to do it, and not doing it. It kills you once you know it.
It's interesting because you're right. I mean, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I eating this? Why am I not sleeping? Right. And so I just, because I'm curious, started going around to people who I thought were totally killing it in the world. Like, what are you doing that you look so good? What are you doing that, you're able to get some sleep? And the thing that they were doing was time blocking. A lot of people are on this phase around quiet quitting. But all this is professional detachment, saying yes to yourself and maybe just 10% less to the organization. And that's what these CEOs and executives were doing. They were blocking time off their calendar and saying, I'm not going to compromise. I'm going to run. And I was so inspired by that. I'm like, well, I want to run too. So I started doing that and eventually ran that 5K, ran that 10K, and then started running marathons and started running up skyscrapers, which is a hobby of mine. I love to compete and do that. But you have to dedicate that time, which means do less at work, but do it better. Like when you're at work, really kill it. And then you have permission to block that time off on your calendar. And maybe you're not interested in marathoning, but maybe get a hobby like woodworking or ice skating. I don't know, whatever it is you people like to do, block that time off on your calendar and do it and know that you can do it because you're killing it at work.
I like to point out here of some particulars, right? Like that. So that's why the podcast has recently changed its name, The Blueprint, right? From whatever it is, because I want to be clear. Your thing is marathon running, right?
Yeah.
Or running up a skyscraper.
Right.
You said you're petite. How much do you weigh?
I am 120 pounds. So
Yeah,
I'm 5 feet tall, 120 pounds, and I lift, right? So I'm muscular. I'm eating a lot of protein, but that means I have to meal prep.
Sure. For me, look, I'm 260. And so running marathons isn't my thing, right?
No.
Right. So there's going to be no marathon running in my near future.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we're both not doing the same thing. Right. We're doing the same thing. We're doing the same layout. We're doing the same framework. That the thing is different, but it's not, right? No. It's taking that time to do what fills your cup and what fills my cup. And what you're saying is so that you actually get more work done. Yes. You don't need to stop and look at your phone because you're like, oh God, I don't want to do that. You just get it done. Right. You just get the work done because you already did what you wanted.
I'm not on Instagram. So, right. I don't have a TikTok for a multitude of reasons. I'm barely on Twitter. They are funny
sometimes though.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if I'm going to waste time, I'm going to do it doing the things I love, which is taking time off and going to see bands. Like this is something I didn't do when I worked in corporate America. For almost 15 years, I can't tell you what concert I went to. And now, especially with the world opening up again, I'm like, oh, hell yes, live music. So I work as hard as I work, but then I also try to enjoy my time off,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to say, I'm never going to not do what I want to do.
No. And as adults, we know we have to make sacrifices for the people we love. Like you have children, right? You have to do some things for your children, but do it with joy. Do it with a sense of being refreshed. Don't do it because you've been working 12 hours a day at a job you hate. And then you've got to just haul your body across the finish line to that t-ball game. Nobody wins with that. Nobody.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about your 4 quadrants.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What was number 1 again?
Number 1 was that idea of self-leadership, that you are individually accountable for how you show up. Many of us in life come from positions that are not of privilege. I'm the first person in my family to go to university and paid for it with a bunch of student loans, which meant I graduated with debt, right? But knowing that, I still felt grateful for that opportunity, and I worked hard to pay that off, right? And so one of the key things about self-leadership is you realize that gratification is going to come. It may be delayed, but it's going to come because you are the owner of your own experience. So you may not be able to go out and party today and live the life that you want today, but if you are in control, you don't let anybody get in your ear. You're not a victim of comparison. Good stuff is going to come. And so I really take inspiration from a lot of people in this world, but 2 people come to mind. One is Nelson Mandela, who was a dissident in South Africa before he was the first Black South African president. And no matter how he was treated, he always treated his jailers with respect. And when he left prison the last time, he shook his jailer's hand. It's like, I'm not Nelson Mandela, and I wouldn't expect anybody else to be, but that's a great lesson on perspective. If you own the game, you're playing the long game, right? That was Nelson Mandela. The other person who I admire and I was lucky enough to spend some time with is Sara Blakely, who's the CEO of Spanx. And she told this amazing story where someone very young in her organization, very junior, came up to her and said, Sara, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I need your feedback. I need your input. And she said, I want you to do your job as if I weren't here, which means lean into the knowledge, skills, and abilities that I hired you for, that you're in this organization for. And if you do that, there's no way you're going to get fired. You may make mistakes, but it's with good intent, and we're all going to learn and grow. And that message to that junior employee permeated the entire organization. People know if you show up and you lean into the reasons why you were hired, you're not going to get fired, and your mistakes are not going to take Spanx under. I was so inspired by that. That was like the key message I needed to hear at the right time. So the first quadrant is self-leadership. Does that resonate with you?
I really like it. Yeah. Look, there's a couple of people in the world that I think if you complain about them based on their like political views that you might disagree with,
sure.
You're just screaming how much of an asshole you are. One of them is Nelson Mandela. Another one for me is Michelle Obama. I think she's disagree with her political, fine, and disagree with him politically, fine. Yeah. But where they came from to where they got to, any of us would be like, oh my God.
For sure. Absolutely. So, one of the really beautiful things about the Michelle Obama example is that she didn't even want to be in politics. She didn't want anybody to know her name. She's just a lawyer. She marries a guy. She gets sucked into all of this. And now, right or wrong, whether you believe in her, best-selling author, out there on all the platforms. So there's a lot to learn about just believing in who you are and believing you are individually responsible for how you show up. That is self-leadership. I mean, there are examples all over the world to show that. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Those are my 2 top though. They're
Nelson Mandela, tough for people. Yeah.
Nelson Mandela and Michelle Obama, right? Because and you used Nelson Mandela in your first case. What a G, like what a baller. And his choice to he actually was very kind to his jailers afterwards too. He wasn't like, fuck these people. He was like, no. They need to come in. Like we need to bring them in and to fix this, which is just an anomaly.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, in a way that is not necessarily continued in South Africa, unfortunately. But it speaks to this desire that we're all human and there is a middle path, there is a middle ground, and you can reconcile and you can move forward. And I think this focus on reconciliation is something as an American society we can all learn from, we can all grow from, have an honest conversation about what happened, but then focus on the future and be responsible for making the future outcomes so much better. Like, if that could happen, that would be amazing. So,
we'd be in a much better place.
Yeah. All right. Second, you want to talk about second quadrant? All right. Well-being, which I know is right up your alley, your jam. Again, like I'm eating Starburst and drinking Pepsi at the airport. Like, what is wrong with me? Right? Cognitively, we understand that people in positions of power need to make big decisions. They need to be critically thinking, parallel thinking. You can't do that on 4 hours of sleep. You can't do that when you've been sitting at your desk all day. You can't do that when you, like, so many people say to me, I haven't had time all day to pee. I'm like, you literally work from home. That's on you. You know, like, you can't pee during the day. That you got some issues like around self-leadership. So well-being is the key to unlocking better thinking, better activities, better opportunities in this world. And again, Elliot, to your point, it doesn't have to be marathoning. It doesn't have to be martial arts. It could be just, you know, enjoying walks around the neighborhood with your family. Whatever it is for you, get your ass up and moving and eat something that's tasty and of this world and not corporate food. I mean, for me, that's the key.
Next.
Okay. The third one is continuous learning. There's all kinds of research that finds that happier, more educated, more ethical workers are continuously learning. And when I say continuously learning, people are like, I don't want to learn anything more about my job. I'm not saying that. All learning is worthwhile. All learning is important. Do you know how many people can't remember why the sky is blue? Go look that up. We should all know that. Or, you know,
why is the sky blue? I don't know why the sky's blue.
So if I remember correctly, I haven't been called on that in a long time. The sky is blue because of a natural phenomenon of reflecting light and oceans and the atmosphere. And so the sky is blue based on the bodies of water that we have.
That's what was that game show? Are you smarter than a fifth grader question?
That's exactly it. So we'll see if anybody calls me out on that. I'm not sure I said that correctly. So, but why is the sky blue? When was the last time you looked up at a tree and knew what kind of leaf that is, right? You know, what are the trees in your yard? There are all kinds of questions that we can be asking. So one of the things that I learned the other day is actually learning about my nail polish and how the history of nail polish is also tied in with the history of paint on automobiles. Like, fascinating, right? There's all kinds of stuff to learn in this world. And when you're learning, you're growing. And when you're growing, you're thriving. And you can take all that really interesting stuff, that energy around learning, and bring it back to your job. So, Elliot, when I have an executive who's like, I hate my job, I want to quit, I want to be a consultant. Like, no, you don't. You are not built to be a consultant after 35 years in the corporate world. But I take them on a 30-day learning journey. And I've had people learn how to ice skate again, learn how to smoke a brisket, you know, learn how to be, for example, I'm working with someone right now who didn't know anything about soccer. His kid is playing soccer and he's like, I want to coach. I want to get involved learning the game. I myself am learning how to play golf. I don't know how to play golf. That's not like a thing that's usually available to petite women like me from Chicago, but I'm learning how to play golf. So taking all of that good energy and bringing it back to the world. And that's a natural boost. It's a natural antidepressant. It's a natural anti-anxiety. So learning is key.
Did you learn how to smoke a brisket with your client?
No, because I'm a vegetarian. I'm like, you do you. Do you know how to smoke a brisket?
I have 3 grills, girl.
Oh, you're going to give lessons is what you're telling me.
Yeah,
I love it.
I have 3 grills. Oh, yeah.
I did learn some lessons of smoking a brisket, which is there are no mistakes. I mean, there are mistakes, but there are no mistakes. You know, you can adjust everything with flavor. You can adjust your approach. The second thing is patience. I mean, this is not something you can do in a day. And the third is that when you smoke a brisket, you can't just eat the brisket by yourself. So you have to invite people in. You have to have a meal around it. And for my client, that sense of community was missing, right? That sense of sitting down and eating with his family was missing. And
that's why I love to smoke. That's why I love to cook barbecue.
Yeah.
For this reason, I learned to cook and cook big meals with like things like barbecue and a brisket because I like to do it with people.
I love it. I love it. That's it. And when you learn, there are major mistakes.
I have to disagree with you. There are major mistakes with smoking a brisket. You can't. You have to get it through the stall. Okay, Lori. And if you don't get it to the right temperature, you're going to eat really, really tough dry meat. I'm a Jew, you know. I'm Jewish, right? Like my so it's the new year right now. It's the high holidays. Absolutely. And there's a lot of Jews right now eating really terrible meat. That's a brisket because they're cooking it wrong.
Well, I love, as a corollary to this in the show notes, we're going to give you some lessons on how to smoke a brisket. Maybe a good recipe. So, so the third quadrant is all about learning. And I feel like you've nailed it. Here. Right. Yeah. Learning is community. So, yeah. And then fourth quadrant is about taking better risk. And I learned this really cool technique from a friend of mine, Chris Ostich. And the technique is called the pre-mortem. It's based in Stoic thinking. So many of us do a post-mortem at work. Something goes wrong. We figure out who to blame and we write it down like in a binder or a virtual binder, right? Put it on the virtual shelf. And then we go to do the thing we want to do again. And we never learn any lessons from that post-mortem. And so a pre-mortem is simple. Before you do anything in this world, just take a minute, and I mean only 1 minute, and write down all the ways you're going to fail. So if you're looking for work right now, which many in your audience may be, you think, how am I going to fail at a job interview? Well, you may not tell a good story. You may not make great eye contact. You may be too sweaty, right? You can do a minute of that. And then when the timer rings, you can look at the list and start to deconflict, to remove those glitches before you do the thing you're going to do. And if you do that, you improve your chance of success by over 30%. NASA does it, Cisco does it, IBM does it, like all the big tech companies do it. Airlines do it. Before you put a plane in the sky, you ask, how is this bird going to fucking collapse,
go down,
right? Yeah. And if you address these issues, you give yourself not only an opportunity to succeed, but to fail in new and more interesting ways. And you talked about Michelle Obama. I fundamentally believe Michelle Obama, who is aware of her image, is doing a pre-mortem before she does anything. How is this book launch going to fail? How is this podcast going to fail, right? And if you de-risk it, you open up your life to success, but again, to failing in better ways, more interesting ways, which I think improves you along the journey. So the pre-mortem for me is something that I did before I quit my large pharmaceutical company. I asked myself, how am I going to fail? Well, I'm not going to be able to stick to a budget, or I'm not going to have a good business plan, or I don't have a good understanding of my brand. And I started to fix these things while I still had a paycheck, understanding money, cash flow, how to run a business, talking to really great corporate people that I worked with. And when I finally felt comfortable, that's when I left. So the pre-mortem is like the secret sauce to success.
It's very interesting. I do it. I coach fighters now, right? Like,
yeah.
I only fight with my wife, and I haven't won in a really long. I haven't won forever. So, but I coach fighters now, and the day of the fight, we do this pre-mortem.
Yeah.
We do this. I want you to take 1 to 2 minutes, and I want you to think about how that person's going to beat you.
Yes.
Right? How are they going to win? Like, what are they going to do to you? Literally a minute or two. Okay, you got it. Now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to not let them do that to you? You can't focus on it, right? These aren't things that you can like harp on forever.
No,
you put too many bad thoughts in your head. Yeah. But you have to be aware of everyone has a path in fighting. That person has a path to victory.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So what's their path to victory?
So good.
Don't do that.
This is what Aristotle did. This is what Seneca did. This is what those old white dudes did, right? If it's good enough for them, their names are still in history. It's good enough for all of us, right? Let's learn to do the pre-mortem and set ourselves up for better odds of success. That has been the key to my life. So normally before I even do a podcast, I ask myself, how is this going to fail? And believe me, I'm still surprising myself. New and interesting ways to fail on a podcast.
How is this one going to fail? What did your pre-mortem of this one look like?
Yeah, I thought, will I be able to tell good stories that are compelling? Will I be able to have good chemistry with you, Elliot? Will I be able to meet the needs of your audience? So, I did a little bit of research myself to make sure I knew your background, to know who might be listening, and also to make sure I had some stories lined up that I thought would be helpful. So far, so good. We haven't failed in any unexpected ways.
I think we're doing all right. I think we're both people. Whatever, however you say that, so we're doing all right. Look, I like to ask a couple of questions that are always, that I ask everybody. Sure. The first one is, I believe that everyone has a unique power in the world, right? Something that, and when I say power, people take this wrong sometimes. I think it's what you go give.
Yeah.
It's the thing that you give to the world that the world then returns back to you. And that might not always be money, or something, So, what is your power?
My mom says that I have an open face. And what I mean is that people can tell me their stories and they feel like it's safe. They feel like it's a trusted space. They feel like I'm not going to denigrate them. I'm going to listen. And it's true on an airplane, and it was true in corporate America, and it's true in my coaching and my writing. I travel the world and people just open up to me. And sometimes it's a little weird, but sometimes it's a gift. Like I learn a little bit about the person I'm seated next to, and I learn also about myself. You know, I sat next to a gentleman the other day who taught on a plane who said, I normally don't talk to people. Like, is that true? I'm not sure, you know, but he then proceeded to tell me the life, like his most recent life story, and about a conflict he's having with his brother-in-law. And we just kind of talked through it, you know, and of course it's rooted in politics. And really, in my approach, I just listened and asked questions. But it's not like I don't have those conflicts in my life around politics, you know, the one aunt or uncle that I disagree with. And it just made me lean into my own sense of empathy and compassion a little bit more. It made me consider my own story, and hopefully it gave him a space to kind of talk through what was troubling him. So I think that's my superpower, my open face.
I want to ask you a question about this. What's mine?
Yeah.
Oh, mine is that when I do it right, you know, when I do it right, I can really make somebody else believe in themselves and find their power.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, when
I believe that.
When I can. Now, look, everything has a drawback, right? There's a flip side to the coin. So I can do it wrong. I've done it wrong plenty in my life as well.
Yeah.
But when it goes well, it goes really well.
I love that.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about that political story for a second. The guy in the airplane to just get on to understand it a little better. Did you agree with the person you were sitting next to politically, or did you agree with the brother?
I agreed with the person I was sitting next to politically, but it doesn't mean that the brother isn't coming at his perspective. The brother-in-law isn't coming at it with earnestness and his own life story. You know, again, most of us are not born from privilege. Most of us have hardship. Most of us have things we've overcome. And really understanding that is often at the root of the conflict. You know, like, how often do you ever say to somebody, no, I get it, or tell me more, or yeah, things were difficult for you, right? I think sometimes that diffuses a situation, especially in families. You know, I have my own relatives who grew up in the school of hard knocks, have a chip on their shoulder, and really feel like the world hasn't done right by them. And the world has not done right by them. And just saying that to people sometimes is welcome, is important. And so this man had never said to his brother-in-law, I hear you. You did grow up under hard circumstances. You did have things tough. That really does suck. And I thought maybe offering that and saying, you know, why don't you just acknowledge that person's pain might be helpful. And also it reminds me to do that in my own life as well.
It's so crazy because we're all so similar in this life. Right? There's guarantees, right? You're going to struggle. There's going to be struggle in your life. And I don't care. But the problem that we do is we start measuring my struggle greater than your struggle. You know, struggle is struggle. Struggle is struggle. And if it's, okay, let's be real, not you having more Instagram followers than me and less than somebody else is not a struggle. So, I mean, we have to define struggle in a realistic way, but everyone struggles, and that's a common goal. Yeah. And
why are we arguing about the measure of struggle? And you know, one of the questions that I like to ask is, you know, where are we going with this? What do you want out of this conversation? Like, can I say anything? Can I do anything? And I have used that on my family, and they're like, no, nobody ever listens, nobody ever hears me. I'm like, oh, I hear you right now, and I get it, you know, and can I do anything for you? You know, like questions like that really hone in on that individual person. What you're really doing is ministering to that open hole in their heart, you know, whatever is broken, they just want to be seen for that moment. I want to help people be seen. So yeah,
that's a great answer. And it's a great superpower.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
The last preordained question, I guess, not preordained, whatever it's called, pre-thought.
Yeah. You've got your system.
Yeah. Why did you say yes to this? In a sense, hold on, let me explain a little more. We have very little in common, probably on the surface. Maybe our audiences might be different. You Google me, and I'm probably punching someone in the head, or I'm getting knocked out, like I'm getting hit. Just got beat up. I don't know which one it is these days. It depends on the algorithm. It doesn't look like we have much in common, and this looks like it might be a waste of your time, because you're probably not going to see a massive ROI, right? Which is what the world talks about so much. Yeah. So why take your hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is that we do here?
Years ago, I worked with someone who said, you got to stop doing these like coffee meetings, basically. You got to stop meeting people for coffee. It's a waste of time. It's not a good use of your calendar. Some of the best relationships I've ever created in my life have been these random connections that blossom into something more. So when I can say yes, I do. And I don't feel like there's really a waste of my time. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not curing cancer here. I'm not writing the next great American novel. It's my goal in this world to meet great people and to hear their stories. And if I say no, I'm missing out more than I'm gaining. Like I don't need to protect my calendar. So I say yes more than I say no. And so you're right. I got an inquiry. I Googled you and I went, hell yeah. Like, why wouldn't I say yes? Okay. I think that's the beauty of my life. And I think that's the beauty of my message. Saying yes leads to so many great things. So that's what I try to do. And I try to live it in my own life. So I'm surprised by that question. I'm honored, frankly, that you asked. And I don't know. I think it's cool. And I think you're great. So here I am.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I want to change the narrative around what an ROI is why I asked that question. So I like to hear people talk about that. Right. Like somebody asked me yesterday if I was going to go to these fights in town. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I can't say I'm going to. And he was like, oh, why not? And I was like, I only go to things that I'm going to get paid for. And he looked at me, and I was like, I'm not talking money, I'm not talking money, right? Like I'm talking like a real ROI. One of my favorite things to do is go to my kids' basketball games. I fucking love it because they love basketball. They love playing basketball. And it's like, I get into it and they're into it and I'm cheering them on. And and we go home and we talk about it and we work on our mindsets. And like, it's just this thing that we do together, And
I do.
So that's a massive ROI for me, a massive one.
Experience. Experience is an ROI.
I refuse to attach my dollar to my hour. Refuse.
I love that.
Because then I'll just try to figure out how to work for more money, right? You get that dollar per hour really high and now you can't say no, right? True. Like you have to go do it, So you're like, God damn, I don't want to, but so I refuse to attach the two because I want a real ROI. So if I'm getting paid, I'm doing it. Yeah. So I want to change that conversation around what is an ROI because I
think that's beautiful.
It's really important. Yeah, it's really important.
Well, see, already my time has been well spent, like hearing about your perspective in this world, understanding how you do things, really feeling inspired. I can see why people hire you to coach them up. It was totally worthwhile for me. So thank you for sharing your time with me.
Oh yeah, I love it. This is one of my, every time I think about stopping podcasting, because podcasting, look, unless you're Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss right, there's no real ROI on it, right? You spend money to edit it or time, right? And nobody really pays you back, right?
No,
Lewis Howes gets paid, got it.
Yeah.
But for 99% of us, we don't make money on our podcast.
The passion. Yeah.
Yeah. So why do it? And every time I get on the damn Zoom and do a podcast, I'm like, God damn, that was amazing. I love that podcast. I like this person.
So, I love it. Well, I'm inspired as well. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Tell everyone where they can reach out. And if they want to work with you or feel inspired by you, we know it's not Instagram. So how do we find you, Lori?
Feel free to find me on Instagram. I answer messages.
Yeah.
But okay. I'm available at the website punkrochr.com, or you could Google I Hate Human Resources and you would probably find me. I'm Lori Rudiman, and I'm the author of a book called Betting on You: How to Put Yourself First and Finally Take Control of Your Career, available everywhere books are sold. So thanks again for the opportunity. It's been really fun.
Yeah, Lori, it was great. I don't know many Loris. The other Lori that I do know well is my best friend's sister. And we really grew up together. He's like my brother, and he passed in 2020. So I've, and it's,
I'm sorry.
And it's okay. And I have a real connection to the name Lori. So I'm pretty sure as soon as I saw your name, before I even looked, I hit the approve button. Just like out of like a sign. And then I looked, like I was like, oh, I like this person. So I'm really glad that it turned out good without my just, hitting approve. So Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Everyone, as always, don't go out in the world and try to be Lori. She has her own unique and special gift that she goes and gives to the world. Don't go out and try to be me, because I have my own unique thing that I do. Go out in the world, everyone, and please find your own power. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found something useful that you can take and implement into your life. Don't forget to head over to wherever you are listening to this podcast and leave a review. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, go follow me on social media at FireMarshal205 on Instagram. Leave a comment, anything that you would like there. And as always, if you think this would be useful for somebody else that you know for their life, send it their way. That would be greatly appreciated. That's it for this episode, guys. I hope you all have a great day and you go step into that power so that you can give your purpose to the world.